Hi everyone, my name is Julie Cosmano. I am based in Australia right now. I'm very excited that you are here to join me with for building your myth-busting lab with Power BI. It is actually midnight, so I do apologize if I sound a bit funny. I'm trying to keep awake as much as I could. Anyway, if you are familiar with Power BI or if you're an expert in Power BI or familiar with Power View and Power Pivot and all that stuff, this session is actually a little bit more on the lightweight side and a little bit more entertaining and educational at the same time. So feel free to join just for the probably educational or some more entertainment value out of it. But yeah, this is meant to be a little bit of introduction sort of session. Alright, so a little bit about me. I won't go through too much since we are actually already 5 minutes into the session. Okay, so what I'm trying to get out of today is I'm trying to relate this to the Mythbusters show. I'm hoping that you do like the show and you can relate to some of it. This is kind of it's sort of inspired by that show. So in Mythbusters, you don't try this at home because it's not safe and all that stuff, but in this session I'm actually trying to encourage you to try this at home. So if you haven't signed up for Power BI or Office 365 with Power BI, please do try it, because you will only learn and discover whether it's suitable for you or your organization or your team by just trying this at your leisure. And as you know, just like Mythbuster, failure is an option. So at some point in time in this session, there might be some issue or hiccups with Power BI because some part of it is actually cloud-based, and you never know what's going to happen with cloud-based sometimes. But so far it's been fairly reasonable. But I'm just sort of giving you a bit of a heads up out there, and I'm hoping that you can sort of come up with holy crap, that's cool, what I'm trying to show you here, because if you do find that that's cool, I would be really happy. And because I am going to go through a couple of myths, you might not believe with the conclusions that I've drawn. That's okay, but the idea is you get to understand how we can make Power BI interesting and how similar it is in terms of myth busting to what we do as data professionals. And what could go wrong? You never know what's going to happen with some of the cloud-based solutions. So give it a go. And the three things that hopefully we'll be able to do here is to to say whether the myths are busted, confirmed, and possible. And at the same time, hopefully this will give you a bit of introduction whether you'll be able to start thinking whether Power BI is something that might be possible, or even confirm that it will work for your organization or for your team members. I give you a bit of a warning. Accidental learning of some myths around driving may be unavoidable, especially some of the ones that we do have in Australia, some of the myths that we have in Australia here. Anyway, so let's get started with myth busting and data professionals. So in summary, I would say that these are some of the steps around myth busting. So you gather the data, set initial myth that you want to prove. You would probably construct objects to test myths, and construct your lab or workshop to test your myths. You want to plan for repeatable tests, and hopefully they're mostly mechanical so that you can just automate some of these tests. And then perform the test and then record the results. It's quite important to record the results because you want to be able to compare sometimes with baselines and all that stuff. And if you can't prove the myths, you might want to expand the circumstances a little bit to to see what would happen, or what would it take to make things happen or to make the myths happen. And of course, these things are scientific and fun anyway, so you want to share with others, and you want to be able to draw a conclusion. So these are, I think, kind of the rough steps in terms of myth busting. And for us as data professionals, you usually come up with this, wanting to find out what the business performance was like, and then come up with speculations and just pretty much things that you want to prove for the business. And in order to do that, most of the time you either search for new data, start collecting, some of the data that would be related to the speculations, for example, or use the existing data. So if you have data warehouse and things like that, that's going to be really, really useful for this exercise. And then once you know where to get the data from, you can create the data model. So essentially, with this one data model, you'll be able to perform a few tests or perform a few queries that would help you to validate the speculations or the questions that business have. And you want to be able to analyze the findings, as well as exploring, what else is out there that you didn't know. You want to learn something new. So not just proving something, but you also want to learn something new. And then you want to be able to share this information with others, like the stakeholders, business people, and then you want to be able to draw conclusion. And one thing that I want to say here is sometimes it is scary to deal with a lot of data if you don't know the context of the data. So so that's, I think, the most important thing. No matter how much how cool the tool that you're using, but if you're not being able to put the summary or the conclusion into a good context, it could be very misleading. Anyway, so we have 3 myths on driving that we want to do today, or that we want to bust or confirm or make possible today. And we have probably about 45 minutes each. I'm trying to get through it as much as possible, as quickly as possible, because there are other things that I want to show you besides just myth busting. And we have one workshop or one lab that we'll use to do the myth busting, which is Power BI and Office 365. For those of you who are not familiar with Power BI, it is a feature of Office 365. So when you have Office 365 subscription, you can have this add-on feature, which is Power BI, and pay a little bit extra to get all the capabilities of Power BI. So there are essentially, two components of Power BI. One is with the on-prem sort of version, which is like Power View, Power Pivot, and Power Map, where you can use on your desktop. You don't have to share it with anyone. So if you're happy with that, then that's fine. You can use Excel 2013. But if you use Power BI, you are able to get more out of it by using the Power BI side to share the reports, to favorite reports, and then do more analytical stuff as well, which I will show you today. And then you'll be able to configure or share data sources or queries that you have within your team. So, Power BI is not just for analysis of data, but it's also for sharing, for collaboration, and for something a little bit more interesting that I'll show you today, hopefully. So, myth number 1. So, in Australia, we have this saying of Sunday drivers. So Sunday drivers, to us, it's like kind of scary drivers in a way, because they're Sunday being a lazy day and they're not paying attention, so it's usually not safe to drive around Sunday drivers. So the key here is the word Sunday. Now I just want to show you where I get the data from. There is this on Azure.com, data market Azure.com. There's a data called USA 2011 car crash data. So this is kind of the main data set that I'm using today. So I'll start with a new workbook. So once you install Excel, part of Office 365, and if you subscribe to Power BI as well, you can go to Power Query. Now here you can start getting data from other places, for example from web or from database, from Windows Azure SQL database if you want to, and from other sources like some of the, let's see, yes, this one from Windows Azure Marketplace. So you can just, once you sign up to that, once you subscribe to that USA 2011 dataset on Azure, you can just link to here. I have done that, but I thought this time around, because we're from SQL Server background, maybe I should show you a couple of things that we can do in terms of dealing with SQL Server database. So I'll switch to my management studio. I've got my database here where it's just like my sandbox database. So if I just go to, let's see, my table name is called US car crash. So I've got about 73,000 records. I don't want to pull everything. Maybe I just want to do select top 10 star, maybe just to make it quicker for now, because I want to demo how you can connect to the database. So let's just start with that. So I switch back to my workbook, go to Power Query, go to From Database, which should prompt me with connectivity details. If you're a fan of Game of Thrones, that's, yes, my server name is named after one of the characters, DevJK. And let's just do that. So that will connect to my SQL database and will retrieve all the metadata and the data as well. Now, there are a few options of connecting to SQL Server database. You can do it the way that I have done here, or there's another option where you can go to, let's see here. So this is the Office 365 website, the Power BI demo subsite of Lobsterpot, where I'm storing all the demo files. Now, within here, you can go to Power BI once it's enabled, and it will look something like this. Now, if you go to the, let's just switch back here. If you go to the Power BI Admin Center, which I've preloaded here, you can set up a gateway. So when you set up a gateway, it will allow people, not just yourself, so other people from other machines to connect to the server that you've set up the gateway for. In this instance, it's just my laptop. And I've set it all up, but it's pretty straightforward to set up. You know, you click and you enter all the details, and once you're up to the install and register, it will download a specific applications that will allow all the connectivity to work. And so far, it's worked beautifully. And then you can also create a new data source. So when you create a new data source, you specify all the details that you to connect to the specific table, for example, in that server. So in this one, I've enabled access via cloud and or data feed, and you can provide the connection info here. This is a must. You enter the gateway that you want to connect to, and save the credentials, and then you can go to and configure the data settings, what you want to allow for people to connect to. So here you have a choice of showing the tables of views. In this instance, I am just sharing the US car crash, and you can see that some of the tables here are highlighted. It's grayed out, and one of the reasons for that is because usually when it's grayed out, it's because the data types are not supported. You can check on the OfficeMicrosoft.com website to see what data sources and data types are supported by the OData feed. So that's something for you to look into before you want to share the tables of views that you have. All right, so pretty much I have set everything up, and I've set up the permission as well. So you can add more people here. So for now, I'm just adding myself. So this is the Power Query that I've shown you from connecting directly to my SQL Server database. So I'm just going to close this because I want to show you what happens if I connect to the. Hang on, let me just go back here. What happens if I go back to, what happens if I want to connect to the OData feed that I have? So I go to From Other Sources and go to OData feeds. I'll just switch back to the Power BI Admin Center, and let me just go back here. Now if I go to the data sources and click on the ellipsis here, it actually will give me the OData feed URL, which I can copy. So that's what I'm doing now. and then just provide the data feed here and click OK. So essentially what happens is that it will connect to that data feed and start retrieving the data for me. Now there are 72,000 records here, and the navigator on the right, if you could see, let me just zoom in. So at the moment it's just kind of processing, making the connection happen, and it will take some time to, well, it will take some time to download 72,000 records. Not too long, but to shorten the time a little bit, I have actually downloaded the data from the data feed. I just want to show you the loading preview bit. So this is actually really nice. Like you can connect to other data feed. It might not be from from your organization. It might be published by that you can consume publicly from website somewhere. But it will be able to show you the preview, which is great before you start importing things. So instead of going ahead with loading everything, I have preloaded the US car crash here. So let's hover on that, and I can click on edit. So this will have all the details of the US car crash in 2011. We have a lot of interesting information such as the crash date, the age, the injury severity, person type, and the roadway and the state where the car crash happened. So what I have configured here in the bottom, I have made sure that the data, I'm just loading it to the data model. You can load it to the worksheet so that you can see the data as a normal Excel worksheet or Excel table. But let's just make it easy and just load it to the data model, which is actually Power Pivot. So everything is in Power Pivot now. So the 72,000 records now, it's in Power Pivot. Now if we go back to the myth that we're talking about now, it's to do with Sunday drivers. So I am interested in finding out Sunday related car crashes. Now I don't have any date dimension here, nor I have the date table on my database, but the community it has been really great. The stakeholder community has been really great in terms of publishing shareable Power Query. Chris Webb and Matt Mason, they both they offer quite a lot of tips on Power Query. So I would highly recommend you visiting their websites. And this particular query, I actually obtained it from Matt Mason's website. It is to create a date dimension. And it's actually pretty awesome. So I'll show it to you because it doesn't take too long to create it, unlike getting the 72,000 records from the data feed. It doesn't take too long, but when you're presenting, sometimes you want to shortcut it a bit. Anyways, so I go to Power Query and select other data sources and create a blank query here. Now to type the query, you go to the view and then click on Advanced Editor. So this allows you to freely type the Power Query that you may have. I'm just going to be lazy and copy and paste the query from Matt Mason, which is to create a date dimension table. And this is actually going to create a function that I can invoke based on, and then provide parameters, and the results will be based on the parameters that I supply, the parameter values that I supply. So if I click on invoke, it will come up with this lovely dialog box, which will ask me for start date and end date, and optionally if you want to provide the culture, you can provide that. Because my data set, the car crash data set, is related to 2011 data, so I'm just going to put in 1st of January 2011 and 31st of December 2011. Yes, the date format here is actually an Australian date format because my Office 365 is installed with Australian language region setting. So if I click OK, it will just start creating the date dimension for date 1st of January 2011 to 31st of December. So that's easy. And I can just name the query to date. Whoops, let's make it a bit more readable. And then down the bottom here, the load settings, instead of going to load to worksheet, I'm just going to change it to load to data model, like such. And then apply and close. So in the background now, Excel's gonna, or Power Query is going to load the data, the date data, into Power Pivot. If I switch back to Power Pivot, I haven't closed that yet. It will showing that Power Pivot is updating. So I should be having my date table coming up shortly. And the interesting thing about Power Query is that you can share this query with other people, and I'll show you in a minute how that works. But let's just go back here, and I just want to switch to diagram view to show you the two tables that I have. Still thinking? Good. Right. So I've got a date table here with the date data type, and I can go to the advanced and then change the data category to date. And then if I go back to my US car crash here, I've got a crash date table. The data category is already assigned to date. And the data type here, I need to make sure that it is changed to date as well, so that I can create a relationship between US car crash and the date table. So if I just drag and drop, that will just create the relationship between the two tables. And then it's still refreshing. Yeah. Okay, and then I can switch back to my table view or data view. And let's just rename this to something a bit more user-friendly. Now, one thing that I want to mention, when you do data modeling in Power Pivot, you want to make sure that the column names and the table names are more user-friendly, easier for people to read, and it just helps with the user experience a lot. But for now, I'm just going to leave the way the column names are. Alright, so I've got the data model. I think it's quite ready to be used for analysis. So to bust the myth of Sunday drivers, I can go to Insert and then click on Power View. So this is where I'm going to perform the testing. Using Power View visualization, because it's just so easy to create good visualization using Power View, and it's just a couple of clicks. Now, sometimes I'm not quite sure whether it's my laptop or some other reasons. For some reason, sometimes opening Power View just takes a little bit of time. So let's see. Alright, so when Power View loads, it will show two tables that I've got in Power Pivot model. If earlier on I had chosen to add the Power Query to data model as well as to the worksheet, then sometimes when you add to Power Pivot, it will, on the right hand side here, they'll come up with a couple of date tables, for example, and US car crash, for example. So it's not really neat and tidy at all. Anyway, so this is Power View in case you haven't seen it before. I am interested in showing the day, so that's called day of week name. So this is one of the reasons why you want to rename the columns, just because like right now just say day of week name. It's pretty reasonable, but I would probably put spaces, rename the columns in Power Pivot just to make it a bit more user friendly. I think Power View is still thinking. Let's just give it a couple of seconds here. So we'll just add the day of week name. Hopefully it will say Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and all that stuff. Okay, Cool, so we have it there. Now, there are a few things that you can do in Power Pivot to make it a bit more friendly. As you can see, day of week name here is just sorted in alphabetical order. You can sort it in a different way based on the start of the day, like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and all that stuff. That's configurable in Power Pivot, but I won't go through that today. Just want you to be aware of it. Now, the next thing that I want to do is to summarize the fatalities in crash, the number of fatalities in crash based on the day of week. And then I also want to add the count of the car crashes, so I'll have to change, instead of summing the ID, I want to count that. So if I sort this, fatalities in crash, it just in descending order. Now it shows me that Saturday actually has the highest number of fatalities. So easily you can prove that. And then I can change the visualization to clustered bar chart, which is still thinking right now. While it's doing that, I'll just switch to show you a completed version of that myth, and then I'll switch back here. All right, so that table now has been converted to bar chart. So you can see how easy it is, and then you can start adding slicers as well if you want to filter a few things, because for example, if you want to filter by age, if you want to filter by drug involvement or call results, you can do that. Let me see if it's loading. All right, so this is something that I have created or prepared earlier. Let's switch to Power View, and let me just enable content. So one of the interesting things about Excel 2013 or Excel part of Office 365 subscription is you may have more than Office 365 accounts. So for example, I do have my work account and I do have my personal account. So at the moment I'm actually logged into my my work account. That's why I can connect to the Power BI side of LobsterPot. Alright, what is it doing now? Okay, still loading Power View. Now I've had this issue with Power View loading quite some time. I am yet to decide whether it is because the latest version or the latest update of Office that I have, or if it is my my laptop that's a little bit underpowered. All right, because it is still thinking, I might just, in the interest of time, I might just switch back to my PowerPoint presentation. So what I was going to show you from the Excel worksheet is this myth number 1, Sunday drivers are dangerous. But if we look at the statistics here, Saturday seems to have the highest for fatalities in crashes and the highest occurrence of car crashes as well. And I'm filtering here on the side person type, driver of a motor vehicle and transport, and I'm also filtering on the injury severity of fatal injury and incapacitating injury. So essentially we could probably say that the fact that Sunday drivers are dangerous, well they are, but not as dangerous as Saturday drivers. So I will say that it's busted here. So I would say that Saturday has higher fatalities. And one thing to remember is that we have not really quite compared the percentage of fatalities of the volume of traffic. So the value that we see here, with Saturday being the highest, what is that of percentage in terms of the volume of traffic overall? So maybe there are more traffic on Saturday than it is on Sunday, for example. So this is where I mentioned earlier that sometimes having a lot of data is good, and being able to summarize this data is good, but sometimes have to be careful in terms of the context as well. I don't have the volume of traffic all over the US states for 2011, unfortunately. I only have the car crash data. So we'll have to kind of go away with it is busted and might be plausible depending on the percentage of fatalities of a volume of traffic. Now I'm going to move away now to myth number 2, which is the highway phobia. So a few people that I've talked to, they're actually, or a few close friends that I talked to, they're actually afraid of highways and driving around highways, and maybe there are some good reasons. And let's have a look at what the data tells us. So the focus here is on highway. Let's see how my Excel file is doing. So that seems to be loading okay. I am going to close book 1 here because I don't need it anymore. Don't save. Right, so I am, so I've got this myth number 1. I'm just going to save this file as a temporary file. Let's see. Right, so I have my data model set up, which is in Power Pivot. Let me switch to that now. Oh no. Remember what I said about failure is an option? This is not good. Alright, so what it's saying here is the data model is in this workbook experiment. Sometimes it is related because I'm running out of memory. So I am gonna try it again. Click on manage. Hopefully it's okay. Woohoo! It's loading. Yes! Failure is an option, but not right now. Alright, so let me switch to the US car crash table, where I am going to show you that there is a column called roadway from the dataset. So it's this one here. So there are several different types. I think it's about 12 of them or something like that. Rural, principal, arterial, interstate, urban, and all that stuff. And essentially, or actually eventually, if you want to later on, you can actually perform some myth busting around rural versus urban traffic accidents or car crashes. So I want to, based on this roadway data, I could actually classify them to highways and not non-highways. And I've figured out, I've gone away and did a bit of research, and I think, let me switch back to Power Pivot here. I think anything that contains arterial, let me show this in larger scale. Anything that is arterial, collector, principal, I think we could classify that as highway. Anything that's unknown, let's classify that as unknown. And everything else should be classified to not highway. So I've prepared the query earlier, and I'll just copy and paste that. And this is going to be my road type column where it contains highway, unknown, or not highway. While that's still thinking, so it has to update 72,000 records here. Alright, so one thing to remember, make sure you, when you install Power Pivot, make sure that you install, if you could, install Excel 2013, the 64-bit version, because it is more reliable. I do have Excel 64-bit edition here, but my sometimes I run into problems just because my laptop might be underpowered. And make sure that you have at least 8 gig of RAM. The higher the better if you're working with Power Pivot, just because it's using in-memory technology. So I am going to name this word type column. Once that's updated, I can go back to my my lovely Power View sheet, and it will warn me that the data model has changed. So every single time you change your data model, hopefully it wouldn't affect existing columns that you're using in existing Power View sheets that you have, because otherwise that Power View sheet might not work anymore. So it just says here, gives me a warning, data model has changed. Make sure that you click OK to apply these changes into Power View, even though I'm not using the roadway, it just refreshes the data. So that's done refreshing. Now I want to insert a new Power View sheet to bust the myth number 2, which is related to highway drivers. I'm just going to do a very quick one here, just because I think we have about 20 minutes left. While that's still thinking. Alrighty, slowly loading. So hopefully by now you can see that Power View is a really useful tool for visualization. It's yeah, it's definitely very easy to use. And unfortunately today I'm showing you the slowness of it. As I said, give it a go in your environment. It might be working a lot quicker and better. Let me see, what else have I got opened? This one should be closed. Yeah, so the more files you open, the more memory it will consume. So that's why I'm trying to close the unused files. Don't save. And then let's go back to my temp2 file here. Alright, remember earlier on I mentioned that if you actually do load the query to if you load Power Query into worksheet as well as data model, sometimes you'll end up with something like this if you add the table into the Power Pivot model as well, which is not really nice, but that's alright. Okay, it's just a bit confusing, that's all, if you have duplicate data like that. So I want to bust the highway word type, so let's click on word type and then click on fatalities in crash, the total, and then the ID as well. Alright, so again, I'm going to change the ID to count. So as you can see here, clearly highway has got the highest fatalities in the crash, so there is a good reason for people to be scared of driving around highway just because it has high fatalities in crashes. But at the same time, here I'm just showing you the actual count, but not the percentage or the ratio of traffic on highway and not highway. Maybe traffic on highway in general is a lot higher than not in highway. So we don't have that information right now. Now what I'm going to do is this one is not responding. I'm just going to close this workbook. Don't save it. And close Excel altogether just because it is not in a good state. I'll just restart the program. Alright, so while it's doing that, this is something that I've prepared earlier, which I will show you once Excel restart. I can create bubble chart on number of highways and how it relates to the number of lanes per highway in around the states, and it will show that California has got fairly a lot more number of highways than other states, and reasonably reasonable number of lanes per highway, and between California, Texas, and I think it's around Georgia area as well, they have quite a high number of car crashes. And on the bottom here, I can create a map that shows you the ratios of highway and not highway road types related fatalities. So this just quickly shows you, based on the pie chart there, that highway actually do have the highest number of crashes. Now that Excel has started, let me go back there. Let me just show you the workbook, and then I will continue on with the rest of the myth. You know what, I might just leave that running now. I just don't want to run out of time. Alright, so I would say that with myth number 2, we can say that it's confirmed that highway is scary, because we do have a lot more fatalities there around states that have highways, or lots of highways. And again, I just want to warn you that you might want to do a bit more research in terms of fatalities over each road type volume. Okay, myth number 3 now. This is an interesting one. Lunatic drivers. This is a common saying that we have in Australia as well, and I think probably in other countries too. So the key word here is lunatic, and the word lunatic is actually coming from lunar. And I just want to show you the different moon phases, how they related to yes, sorry. For some reason, webinar is actually having an issue. Sorry, for some reason my computer is not responding. Let me just close everything. And restart again. Apologies about the technical difficulties today. Yeah.
It's a bad GoToWebinar day.
Yeah. Sorry, GoToWebinar just sent me a message earlier that it's not responding. I think it's saying that, oh, hide your webcam, but I'm pretty sure I'm not sharing my webcam, so I don't know what happened there. All right, so it's still loading Excel. So what I was trying to mention earlier is that, so I've got the US car crash data for 2011, I've got the date dimension already, and I've got the US lanes data pulled in already for myth number 2. And for myth number 3, I'm actually trying to relate how the moon phases on every day in 2011 relate to car crashes. So what we can do here, once we know when the first quarter, half moon, full moon, and new moon, first quarter, half moon, full moon, and new moon happen on each day of the in 2011, we can start correlating that information in Power Pivot, update the data model appropriately, and then start doing the analysis using Power View. So I'm still loading it now. Hopefully it's not going to take too long. And essentially what I want to show you is how they relate. Power View is not responding. Remember earlier when I say failure is an option? Might be what's happening now. If this doesn't happen in the next 10 seconds, I might just have to show you the screenshot of it rather than show you the Power View side of it. All right. Okay. Alright, I'm going to park that. Maybe it's still thinking. One thing that I want to show you is that you can share your workbook that you have created earlier to Power BI, which is what I have done here. I've actually uploaded that workbook to my Power BI site, except it's not quite right for this particular screen. It should say myth number 3, and I obviously forgot to rename the title. But yes, so this is what Power BI will look like once you upload it to Power BI site, and it's working quite well. It's interactive. You can click on it. It should be clickable. Yeah, there we go. Which highlights just the same way as Power View would. And yeah, so a good thing about using Power BI is that you can share this workbook with people in your organization. So you can be more portable, you can be more mobile, and on top of that, if you use Power BI app, that would help as well. You know, while we're here, I might as well show it to you. So this is the Power BI app for Windows 8.1. So if you have Surface, you have tablet. Hopefully, I'm not quite sure what the support is for iPad yet, but for Surface it works beautifully. You know, it's touch friendly, so it's great. So let me just switch back to my normal desktop. So this is what it looks like for myth number 3, and I might just skip ahead because we only have about 10 minutes left. So Lunatic drivers. So as you can see, New Moon here actually has got the highest, usually has got the highest fatalities compared to Full Moon. So maybe instead of Lunatic drivers or, you know, being careful around driving Full Moon, we should probably be careful about driving New Moon, or be careful about driving in general. So Lunatic drivers on Full Moon, it's busted. Like, you know, you have to be careful wherever you go, but I think New Moon is the time that you want to be careful as well. And maybe the stats showing that, you know, Full Moon drivers, Full Moon don't have that many fatalities because people are actually avoid driving on Full Moon perhaps. Maybe that's what the stats showing us. Alright, so beyond myth busting, what I want you to try at home once you subscribe to Power BI Q&A is that you can start creating your own myths that you want to bust by going to the Power BI Q&A. Let's reload this. Or not. Let me go back to here and then ask with Power BI Q&A. So this is the Power BI Q&A. It's got quite a lot of workbooks from different parts of Microsoft Office samples. You can start typing up questions, and depending on which workbooks that you have enabled for Power BI Q&A to index, you can start asking questions like show total car crash. Come on. It's not responding. Alright, still thinking. So it summarizes 72,310 kind of car crash, and you can summarize it by day. You can also start saying show total car crash by state. I think it might still be thinking. So it shows the map of United States with the total car crash shown. Then I can start doing things like start asking questions. How is it going to compare on, let's say, Super Bowl versus Valentine's Day? So yeah. So this is interesting analysis that you can perform. So once you have the data set all good, in Power Pivot you can create synonyms so that Power BI Q&A understand the language that you'll be using here, and do really cool analysis like this. And another one that I wanted to show you, let's just go back to the PowerPoint and show time. Power Map you can create. There are quite a lot of Power Map demo out there, or Power Map tutorial out there, so I won't bother with creating it for you right now, but this is the kind of things that you can share. This is like a video of Power Map that you can save and share for business people. And please make sure that when you do Power Map visualization, make it a bit more sort of informative as well. You can get carried away with all this animation, but make sure that it's useful. For example, here I'm showing that California and Texas are the most dangerous season, or the most dangerous season for traffic is summer, whereas Pennsylvania and Florida is in fall and winter respectively. Another new feature that was announced at Power BA, at Past BA conference is forecasting and hindcasting that is now available for Power View on Office 365. So let's go back to that worksheet here. If I go back to the trend Power View sheet, you have to convert your Power View sheet to HTML5, because when you first load, it usually loads in Silverlight version. Once you convert to HTML5, there's this feature that you can enable, which is to do with trending. Once you drag that dot across, it will start coming up with seasonality. So it picks or it detects the seasonality in your data set and then try to do a bit of forecasting. And if you have a look here, at the moment it's automatically picked every 14 units, which is 14 days because the granularity is in days. And you can change that to 52 if you'd like. And then you can also change the acceptable confidence interval, to 1 standard deviation, for example, and it starts adding shades here. And you can also do hindcasting here and see how it would look like if it uses the same algorithm over the existing data. So that's something interesting that you can try at home, as long as the data supports seasonality. Some data is just purely random and you can't do prediction on it. Anyway, so this is only available on the online version of Power View. All right, 3 minutes. Power BI is good for collaboration as well, as I've shown you earlier. It's pretty much similar to SharePoint, and there's this Power BI site where you can actually start favoriting reports so people can see, what's new, what's the latest. And then it's portable as well, where I've shown you earlier with the Power BI app, where you can start relating a few things like, for example, in this one here, how the weather and moon and age actually how they relate to one another. And it looks like if you're age 21 on full moon, you probably have got the highest risk of car accidents, unfortunately to say. So I'll just wrap it up because we don't have much time left. So Power BI enables self-service BI as well as collaborative BI for to work with your team. You can share the information. And it's also Mythbusting BI, so you can do more analytical work, for example, with the trending or forecasting weather, and you can ask questions with Power BI Q&A, and I think that's just awesome. Just to summarize what we have talked earlier about the steps in Mythbusting, we can relate. So for example, Power Query here, you can use it to get the data and set initial myths, and you can use Power BI Office 365 as the platform for testing. You can design the data model using Power Pivot. You can perform the tests using Power View, Power Map, Pivot Table charts, and you can explore more myths using Power BI Q&A and Power View as well, and Power Map if you want to, and you can share with others using Power BI site or Power BI app or Office 365. But the key thing is for you and your team to be able to draw conclusion and how to relate the data or put the data into context. So that's the key. No matter how cool the tool that you're using, but if the summary of the conclusion is not put into context, it could be pretty dangerous. So this is some information about pricing. Yeah, so I think this is a US price. So if you have a subscription to Office 365, be sure to check it out. Sign up for trial. Some countries are still not enabled for the trial, which is unfortunate. So for further reading, go to powerbi.com website. It's got a ton of useful information. Chris Webb's Power BI articles are always enlightening, and Matt Mason also blogs on quite a lot of Power Query stuff as well, so be sure to check it out. And I have also got some YouTube video for Mythbusting Draft Fatalities. This particular YouTube video is actually a bit more kind of gender related. If you do marketing research, sometimes you kind of have to start, unfortunately, profiling different demographic characteristics like age and where you're located, and also the gender as well. I don't mean to be sexist about in my YouTube video, but that's just the way kind of marketing works. And hopefully this session has been useful for you. If you have any questions, just let me know. Otherwise, contact me on my via email or via Twitter. I'm on Twitter at msqlgirl or missqlgirl. And hopefully this session has been educational and entertaining for you. And thank you so much. And do please drive safely. And hopefully it's been a useful session for you.